Chapter 2. Yesterday afternoon. Set in Steinkold. I had half a mind to spend it. BYMY study fire. Instead of waiting Thruff Heath. And mud to Wuthering Heights. On coming up from dinner. However, I dine between 12 and 1 o'clock. The housekeeper, Amatron la lady. Taquina is a fixture. Along with the house. Could not or would not comprehend my request that I might be served at 5. On mounting the stairs. With this lazy intention, and stepping into the room, I saw a servant girl on her knees surrounded by brushes sand coal scuttles and raising an infernal dust as she extinguished flames with heaps of cinders. The spectacle drove me back. Immediately, I took me hat and, after a 4 miles walk, arrived at Heathcliff's garden gate. Just in tomato scape. The first feathery flakes of a snow shower on that bleak hill top. The earth was shard with a black frost. And fear made me shiver through every limb. Being unable to move the chain, I jumped over and, running up the flagged causeway bordered with straggling gooseberry bushes, knocked vainly for admittance, till me knuckles stingled, and thetic showled. Wretched inmates, I ejaculated, mentally, you deserve perpetual isolation from your species. 40-hour churlishin spitally. At least, I would not keep me doors barred in the daytime. I don't care, I will get in. Source solved. I grasped at the latch and shook it vehemently. Vinegar-faced Joseph projected from around window of the barn. What are ye for? He shouted. T maesters down I te fouled. Go round bith and op the lathe. If ye wento spicito him. Is Therino body inside? Tupenthy door? I hallooed, responsively. There's nobbit tea, missus. And shall not oppen tea. And ye mac your flaysome. Din still neat. Why? Cannot you tell her whom I am, Joseph? Nor an me. I'll hay. No hind white. Muttered the head, vanishing. Thesnobigan. To drive thickly. I sighs at the handle. To essay another trial. When a young man without coat and shouldering gappage fork appeared in the yard behind. He hailed me to follow him. And, after marching through a wash house and a paved area containing a coal shed, pump, and pigeon cot, we at length arrived in the huge, warm, cheerful apartment where I was formerly received. It glowed delightfully. In the radiance, often immense of fire, compounded of coal, peat, and wood, and earthable, laid for a plentiful evening meal. I was pleased to observe the Mrs. an individual whose existence I had never previously suspected. I bowed and waited, thinking she would bid me take a seat. She looked at me, leaning back in her chair, and remained motionless and mute. Rough weather, I remarked. I'm afraid, Mrs. Heathcliff, the door must bear the consequence. Afio your servants' leisurely attendance. I had hard work to make them hear me. She never opened her mouth. I stared. She stared also. Tannerate. She kept the ricin in a cool, regardless manner. Exceedingly embarrassing and disagreeable. Sit down, said the young man, gruffly. He'll be in soon. I obeyed, and hemmed. And called Thevelane Juno. Hodiined. A thissecond interview. Tomavethi extremitip. Offertail. Into kino founding my acquaintance. A beautiful animal. I commenced again. Do you intend parting with the little ones, madam? They are not mine, said the amiable hostess, more appellingly than Heathcliff himself. Cold have replied. Ah, your favorites. Airy among these? I continued, turning to an obscurocution, full of something like a cat's. A strange echoes of favorites. She observed it scornfully. Unluckily, it weighs a heap of drabbits. I hemmed once more, and drew closer to the hearth, repeating my comment. On thu illness of evening. You should not have come out, she said, rising and reaching from the chimney piece. Took the painted canisters. Her position before washeltered from the light. Now, I had a distinct view of her whole figure and countenance. She was slender and apparently scarcely past girlhood. An admirable form, and the most exquisite little face that I have ever had the pleasure of beholding. Small features, very fair, flaxen ringlets, or rather golden, hanging loose on her delicate neck, and eyes, had they been agreeable in expression, that would have been irresistible. Fortunately, for my susceptible heart, the unly sentiment thigh evinced hovered between scorn and a kind of desperation, singularly unnatural. Toba detected there. The canister swear. Alma studa feriac. I made emotionto aid her. She turned upon A samister might turn. Ifany one attempted to assist him in counting gold. I don't want your help, she snapped. I can get them for myself. I beg your pardon. He hastened torpidly. Were you asked to tea? She demanded, tying Ganapron over her neat black frock and standing with a spoonful of the leaf poised over Thepid. I shall be glad to have ye a cup, I answered. Were you asked? She repeated. No, I said, half smiling. Yuri Thepra Purperson. Tosk me. She flung Theta back. Spunendal. And resumed her chair. In a pet. Her forehead corrugated. And her redunderlip pushed out. Like he a child's reddito cry. Meanwhile, the young man had slung onto his person a decidedly shabby upper garment and, erecting himself before the blaze, looked down on me from the corner of his eyes. For the world, us if there were some immortal feud navinged between us. I began to doubt whether he wary a servant or not. His and speech were both rude, entirely devoid of the superiority observable in Mr. And Mrs. Heathcliff. His thick brown curls were arrogant cultivated. His whiskers sank bearishly over his cheeks, and his shans were browned like those of Facamin labourer. Still, his bearing was free, almost haughty, and he showed none of atomistic's assiduity in attending on the lady of the house, in the absence of clear proofs. Office condition, I deem it best to abstain from noticing spurious conduct, and 5 minutes afterwards, the entrance of Heathcliff relieved me, in some measure, from the uncomfortable state. You see, sir, I am come according to promise, I exclaimed, assuming the cheerful and fear I shall be. Weather bound for half an hour. If you can afford me shelter during that space. Half an hour? He said, shaking through white flakes from his clothes. I wonder you should select the thick o' fast no storm to ramble about in. Do you know, Thadia? Run a risk of being lost in the marshes? People familiar with the simmers often miss their road on such evenings. Andy can tell you there is no chance of a change at present. Perhaps I can get a guide among your lads. Andy might stay at Grange till morning. Could you spare me own? No, I could not. Oh, indeed. Well then, I must trust Tomion sagacity. Are you going to Macthedia? Demanded Hef the shabby coat. Shifting his ferocious gaze. From a young lady. Is he to have any? She asked, appealing to Heathcliff. Get it ready, will you? Waste hint, sir. Uttered so savagely. That is started. That Tony and Wick the words were said revealed. Genuine a bad nature. I no longer felt inclinedical. Heathcliff a capital fellow. When the preparations were finished, he invited me with, now, sir, bring forward your chair. And we all, including the rusticaouth, drew round the table, an austere silence prevailing. While we discussed our meal, I thought, if I had caused the cloud, it was my duty to make an effort, to dispel it. They could not every day sit Sagraman taciturn, and it was impossible. However ill-tempered they might be, that universal scowl they wore was their everyday countenance. It is strange, I began, in the interval of swallowing one acupoftia, and receiving Ganether. It is strange how custom can mold our tastes and ideas. Many could not imagine the existencio fappiness in Alafif such completixo from the world. As you spend, Mr. Heathcliff. Yet, I'll venture to say that, surrounded by our family, and with the Uramiable lady, as the presiding genius, over your amend heart, my amiable lady, he interrupted, with an almost diabolical ease near on his face. Where-ish, my amiable lady? Mrs. Heathcliff. Your wife, I mean. Well, yes, oh, you would intimate. Thather spirit thastaken. Thepo stoff ministering gongle. And guards the fortunes of Wuthering Heights. Even when her body is gone. Is that it? Perceiving myself in a blunder, I attempted to correct it. I might have seen. There was no agreeata disparity between hedgy soft parties. To make it likely that they were a man and wife. One ways about 40. A period of mental vigor, at which men seldom cherish that illusion of being married. For love by Jovincitus, that dream is reserved for Thessalus. Oh, for declining years. Theather did not look 17. Then it flashed upon me. The clonatmeal bow. Wash drinking hystia out of a basin, and eating his bread with unwashed hands. Maybe her husband. Heathcliff Jr., of course. Harris the consequence. Off being buried to live. She has thrown herself away. upon that bore. From sheer ignorance. That better individual sexisted. A sad pity, I must beware. How I cause a herdergrit. Her choice. The last reflection may seem conceited. It was not. My neighbor struck me. As bordering on repulsive. I knew, through experience, that I was tolerably attractive. Mrs. Heathcliff. Is me daughter-in-law? Said Heathcliff, corroborating my surmise. He turned, as he spoke, a peculiar look in her direction. A look of favored, unless has a most perverse set of facial muscles that will not, like those of other people, interpret the language of the soul. Ah, certainly, I see now. You are the favored possessor of tea beneficent fairy, I remarked, turning to me neighbor. This was worse than before. The youth grew crimson and clenched his fist with a very appearance of a meditated assault. Both seemed to recollect himself presently and smothered the storm in a brutal curse muttered on me behalf, which, however, I took care not to notice. Unhappy in your conjectures, sir, observed me host. We neither office haveth the privilege of founding your good fairy. Hermetius dead. I said, she was me daughter-in-law. Therefore, she must have a Marie Edmison. And this young manus. Not missin, assuredly. Heathcliff's Moldagan. Ossifitoire Tubal digesto attribute. The paternity of that bear. To him. Minimize Hareton Earnshaw. Growled Theodore. And I'd counsel you to respect it. I've shown no disrespect, was my reply, laughing gently at the dignity with which announced himself. He fixed his eye longer than I cared. Toward the stare, for fear I might be tempted either to box his ears or render my hilarity audible. I began to feel unmistakably out of place in that pleasant familiar circle. The dismal spiritual atmosphere overcame, and Maretha neutralized the glowing physical comforts round me. Andy resolved to be cautious. How I ventured under the sear afters. A third time, the business officiating being concluded, and no one uttering a word of sociable conversation, I approached a window to examine the weather. A sorrowful sight I saw. Dark night coming down prematurely, and skiing hills mingled in nebiter whirl. Off when Dan's suffocating snow. I don't think it possible for me to get them now. Without a guide, I could not help exclaiming, Therods will be buried already. and if thee were bear. I cold scarcely distinguish a foot in advance. Hareton driveth o citizen sheep into the barn porch. They'll be covered if left in the fold all night. And pewed a plank before 'em, said Heathcliff. How must I do? I continued, with rising irritation. There was no reply to my question, and in looking ground, I saw only Joe's bringing in Apaloff porridgey forth the dogs, and Mrs. Heathcliff leaning over the fire, diverting herself with burning a bundle of matches, which had fallen from the chimney piece. Ash resto red thedia canister. Toits place. The former, when had apposited his burden, took a critical survey of the room, and in cracked tennis graded out. I wonder how ye can to stand theory idleness sunward, when all on him's gone out, booty out, and it's no use talking, y'all. Niver mindo your ill ways, but go arado te divil. Like your mothera for ye. I imagined, for a moment, that the specio feloquence was addressed tome, and, sufficiently enraged, stepped towards the Gadraskell, with an intention of asking him out of the door. Mrs. Heathcliff, however, checked Mebby Herenser. You scandalous old hypocrite, she replied. Are you not afraid? Oft been carried away bodily. Whenever you mention the devil's name, I warn you to refrain from provoking me, or I'll ask your abduction. Ask a special favor. Stop. Look here, Joseph, she continued, taking a long, dark book from a shelf. I'll show you how far I've progressed in the black art. I shall soon be competent to make a clear house of it. There'd cowed die by chance. Andio or rheumatism can hardly be reckoned among providential visitations. Oh, wicked, wicked, gasped Hilder. May the Lord deliver us from evil. No, reprobate. You area castaway, be off, or I'll hurt you seriously. I'll have you all modeled in wax and clay. And the first will possess the limits. I fix shall, I'll not say what the shall be done to, but you'll see. Go, I'm looking at you. The little witch, Putamok malignity, into her beautifulies, and Joseph, trembling with sincere horror, hurried out, praying, and ejaculating wicked as he went. I thought their conduct must be prompted by a species of treason, And now that we were alone, I endeavored to interest her. In me distress, Mrs. Heathcliff, I said earnestly, you must excuse me for troubling you. I presume, because, with that face, I'm sure you cannot help being good-hearted. Do point out some landmarks by which I make know me way home. I have no idea how to get there. Then you would have how to get to London. Take the road you came, she answered, ensconcing herself in a chair, with a candle and the long book open before her. It is brief advice, beauty soundas, I can give. Then, if you hear of me being discovered dead in a bogger pit full of snow, your conscience won't whisper that it is partly your fault? How so? I cannot escort you. They wouldn't let me go to the end of the garden wall. You, I should be sorry to ask you to cross the threshold for my convenience on such a night. I cried. I want you to tell Mimi way, not to show it. Oral Cedo persuade. Mr. Heathcliff to give me a guide. Who? There ish himself. Earnshaw, Zilla, Joe's Fandai. Which would you have? Are there no boys at the farm? No, Thozerial. Then it follows that I am compelled to stay, that you may settle with thy host. I have nothing to do with it. I hope it will be a lesson toy to make no moreish journeys on these hills, cried Heathcliff's stern voice from the kitchen entrance. Asto staying here. I don't keep accommodations for visitors. You must share a bed with Hareton or Joseph. If you do, I can't sleep on a care. In this room, I replied. No, no. A stranger is stranger. Be Harricore poor. It will not suit me to permit anyone the range of the place while I am off guard. Said Thune mannerly wretch. With this insult, my patience was at an end. I uttered an expression of disgust and pushed past him into the yard, running against Earnshaw. In me haste, it was so dark that I could not see Themiance affects it, and as I wandered round, I hard no their specimen off their civil behavior amongst each other. At first, the young man appeared about Topfer and me. I'll go with him as far as the park, he said. You'll go with him to hell, exclaimed his master. or wait a verelation habor. And voice to look. After the horses, a man's life. I sof more consequence than an evening's neglect. Of the horses, somebody must go, murmured Mrs. Heathcliff. Morkan lithe than I expected. Not at your command, retorted Hareton. If you set store on him, you'd better be quiet. Then I hope his host will haunt you. And he hope Mr. Heathcliff will never jet an o'thirten it. Tilth Grange's heroine. She answered, sharply. Hearken, hearken. Shoes cursing on M. Muttered Joseph, towards whom I had been steering. He sat within earshot, milking the cows by the light. O lantern, which I seized unceremoniously, and calling out that I would send it back. On the morrow, rushed to the nearest postern. Meester, meester, he's staling lanthorn, shouted the ancient, pursuing my retreat. Hey, Nasha. Hey, dog. Hey, wolf. Hold him, hold him. On a peening felidal door. Two Harryminsters. Flute Mithroat. Bearing me down. And extinguishing the light. While a mingled guffaw. From Heathcliff and Hareton. Puthecopestone. Omorage and humiliation. Fortunately, the beast seemed more bent on stretching their paws and yawning and flourishing their tails than devouring may live. But they would suffer no resurrection, and he was for settlely till their malignant masters. Pliaceto deliver me. Then, hatless sand trembling with wrath, I ordered the miscreants, tollett me out on their peril, to keep me oniminate, longer with several incoherent threats, of retaliation that, in their indefinite depth of virulency, smacked off King Lear. The vehemency of my agitation brought on a copious bleeding. Athenos. And still Heathcliff laughed. And still scolded. I don't know what would have concluded the scene had there not been on a person at hand rather rational than myself, and more benevolent than me entertainer. This was Zillah, Thestouth's wife. Woat length issued forth, towing querent thinnature of the uproar. She thought that some of them had been laying violent thansom, and, not daring tote tacker master, she turned her vocal artillery against the injured scoundrel. Well, Mr. Earnshaw, she cried, I wonder what you'll have a gate next? Are we going to murder folk? On every door stones? I see this house will never do. For me, look at t poor lad. He's fair choking. Wished. You mustn't go on so. Come in, and I'll cure that. There now, hold ye still. With us words, she suddenly splashed apentophacy water down me neck and pulled my tothekichin. Mr. Heathcliff followed. His accidental merriment expiring quickly in his habitual moroseness. I was exceedingly and dizzy and faint, and thus compelled perforce to accept lodgings under his roof. He told Zillah to give me glass of brandy, and then passed on to the inner room, while she condoled with me on my sore predicament, and, having obeyed his orders, whereby I was somewhat revived, ushered me to